Good morning and welcome. I'm Bob Pace. I'm your host on this live podcast from Southern California, How to Fight CPS and Get Your Children Back. It's very important that you know what to do in a CPS case. Now, CPS stands for several things, but I like to refer to all the different organizations that deal with child neglect and child abuse. Child Protection Services is CPS. That means anywhere. It can be called other things. In California, it's called Child Protection Services. And so this child protection system could be in Arizona, Department of Child Services, DCS. In other states, other places, it can be other things. So when I refer to CPS, I mean the organization. It's a federal organization, a branch of social services that deals with protection of our children from neglect and abuse. It also includes family reunification. Family reunification. That's where they're supposed to help you get your family back together, because studies have proven that the best parents for children are the biological parents. The biological parents. They're the ones the child was brought up with into this world. And we're not all perfect parents. We're not born with a handbook or a manual of how to raise children or how to do relationships. We try our best to learn what's right and from wrong and do what's best for our children. Along the way, sometimes we do things that are not suitable for children, and they can be corrected. That can be fixed. Not every child is in extreme danger as CPS leads it to be. Lately, with over the 500 some people that I've interviewed in all the 50 states of the country, it seems like every case the child is in extreme danger, which is not the case. I had a CPS case myself, so I'm talking from firsthand experience. I've been there where you've been there. And it took me 3 years to get my children back after they were taken. I've been involved with CPS for over 15 years. 5 years before my case, before my children were stolen by CPS, or trafficking is a better word to use, because that's what they do, is they do child trafficking. My kids were taken unnecessary. They weren't in extreme danger. They were not in extreme danger. That's just how the organization in Orange County works. That's in Southern California. Their MO is to keep your child as long as they can so they can make their monthly money from the federal government. It's sad to say that they're in there for the money. It isn't for the best interest of the family or the children. So you got an uphill battle to deal with, and I know how hard it is. Now, this podcast is interactive, meaning you can text me a message. I love to hear from you. You can send emotes, which someone already has. Thank you very much. I already got a love heart from Dana Hoffman. Thank you, Dana. And we already have several people listening to us. And welcome. But you can text a message. All you do is you type in the message of what you want to know about CPS or about your case or how I can help you. That's interactive. Now, all I ask is you have your name and the city and state you're texting from. Now, countries are welcome. I love to have countries from all over. There's no question about that. So far, we've had Australia text a message in, Canada, United Kingdom, Ghana, Mexico, Mozambique, and lately it was Denmark. Denmark the other day dropped in and said hello. And I know that it involves everywhere in the world. So I'm happy to hear from other people. And all I ask is you put your name and your country and city and whatever CPS matter you like to talk about. Now, Dana Hoffman has said, Dana's from Idaho, and it's really nice because you see, I feel for all you listeners. You guys are searching. You're searching for answers on how to get your children back, or how to keep your children, or how to deal with that monster, that CPS system monster. Because no matter what state it is, they all have something in common. They can't get their children back. It's all about money. And they are just cruel to the way they treat parents and families and grandparents and elders and seniors. They do alienation, which is illegal. They alienate you from your parents to children. And they do an investigation to take advantage that you don't have the knowledge. You open your home, which you don't need to. You give permission to enter your home. You give them your kids. It's so sad. There's also medical trafficking, too. That's where a mother may be given birth, and because she tested positive for drugs, the caseworker in the hospital marches in with the Gestapo. I'm calling the police Gestapo because that's how they're intimidation. And march out with a child freshly born, hadn't had a chance to nurse with a mother. Those are extreme cases I'm talking about, but it does happen. So there's medical trafficking too. There's parents that have sick children that want to get them better, and they take them to the hospital and they don't like what the doctor's saying, or they want to try another opinion from another doctor. Right away, the caseworker, a CPS worker in the hospital, will hear about it from the doctor and they will take your child. They say your child's in immediate danger. You're not protecting them by doing what the doctor wants. You, as a parent, have a right to which doctor, which medical hospital, what procedure you want done to your child. Now, if you refuse any medical procedure, that's another thing. But I'm talking about parents that are wanting to help their children, and maybe the hospital, is thinking differently. But you, as a parent, have a right. There's constitutional and civil rights that you, as parents, need. Dana, now message with us. I'm going to try to put it up there so we can read it. It says all these people think they can stop the child trafficking. They don't ever, because that's the government's goose egg. Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's an interesting way to put it there. I would have thought this country would have changed in 52 years. It's only gotten worse. We need to teach folks, they need to stand up, these evil, rotten people in government. Yeah, I hear you. And I don't know why you picked 57 years. I don't know what's important about 57 years. Because the Child Protection Services, they like divided into three eras, from colonial days to 1875, from 1875 to 1962, and 62 on up. And there's been a lot of changes in the 70s and 80s. Oh, you're 57 years old. Oh, I'm sorry, Dana. I'm sorry. I was one of the significant of 57. Well, I've only been fighting for 15 years. Um, and I got my kids back, but it was a long story on that, Dana. Another way you can interact with the show besides texting is you can call into my show and be a guest speaker. I do have guest hosts. There's supposed to have been a Danielle show up this morning from Georgia, but I don't see her. Also, Kay from Georgia had mentioned express interest. It's hard, I guess, for people to talk on a regular basis. I do this 7 days a week, twice a day. And it is hard at times. It's hard to talk about something that's so evil, that is so demeaning and so puts you down. It really is. But please call in at 626 698-0990. I love to hear from you. Also, any social workers that are listening in, I welcome you. I had a social worker from Maryland call in and talk to me for a good 40 minutes. It was good to hear from her point of view in Maryland about how they treat parents and families. And I've had several families call me from Maryland, and so it's important that anybody can come on my show and talk about CPS. I'd love to have you. Again, it's 626-698-0990. Okay, understand. Dana will return, she says. Okay. If you don't want to talk on the show, but would like to talk to in the future, like I have my hosts, my guest hosts, and my guests, you can contact my producer. Her name is Grace, and she works really hard to produce the show and make it interesting and keep track of all of this. She can be emailed grace@vincentwdavis.com. That's grace@vincentwdavis.com, and you can be my host. You can be my guest on my show. Be my guest on my show. All you do is email grace@vincentwdavis.com. So I look forward to having you because I'm on the show at 10 o'clock every morning, Pacific Standard Time for an hour, except on Sunday I come on 2 hours early at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm on at night at 7 o'clock p.m. for an hour, Pacific Standard Time. That's 14 shows a week, 7 days a week. And I do so because I'm hoping to reach out to somebody new or somebody that is panicking searches on Facebook for Fight CPS. That's how you found me, is through Facebook. I'm broadcasting on YouTube. I'm using the StreamYard application. I can have as up to many as 9 people on the screen live if you want to be a guest on my show. So that is another way you can interact with the show. Now, we had Dana Hoffman from Idaho that has an extreme case, and she says that she's been fighting them for 57 years. Now, I don't know if she was born into foster care, but she's been there a long time, she says. Well, you're probably asking yourself, what do I do with this agency called CPS? Well, with like anything, you have to educate yourself. Our problem is I didn't educate myself either. I thought I could trust the government agency. I thought I could be honest with them. That proved to be false. Do not talk to social workers or even the police. Be polite to them. Use yes, no answers. When I mean be talking, don't say very little. An easy way to get away from talking to social workers is to say, give me your card with your name and phone number, and I'll contact my attorney and I'll get back to you. That's your right. You don't have to speak to them. The only time that a CPS worker can come into your home or a policeman is if they have a warrant or there's extreme danger, imminent danger to your children. For instance, there could be a fight going on with a gun going off. That's imminent danger. Maybe with a knife, maybe with physical fisting with the child, throwing the child against the wall. Those are all called imminent danger. The police and the CPS worker can come into the home. Otherwise, they need something called a warrant. It's a legal document that's issued by the court, signed by the judge. If a social worker wants to take your child or come into your home, they have to seek that document and they have to give reasons. Problem is, these judges are too easy to write warrants. Now, in my case, I didn't know that law. I did not know about warrants. So I just very lightly come into my home. And when they wanted to take my children, I didn't step away. Of course, my children were at school. But going back to the warrant, it's very important that the warrant is spelled out correctly. It's spelled out correctly. It's got to be signed by a judge. It's got to very clearly say what the allegations are. It's got to say who they're investigating, what address they're investigating, what date and time they could come into your home or take your child. Same thing true if you're at the hospital. You can't have them take your children at the hospital. They got to have a warrant. If you're homeless in the car, as another mother was, they can't take your child because you're homeless is not a crime. It's not a crime. It's an unfortunate experience that happened to you through many reasons. You could have lost your job, could have a death in the family. You could have been kicked out of your home. There's so many reasons. Long if the children you're with are taken care of. They're provided a warmth, place to sleep, food in their bellies, clothes on their back, and they're taken to school if they're at that age they're supposed to be in school, and their medical needs are met. And hopefully, instead of people putting down homeless people or putting them down, they'll help them. You see, what I don't seem to understand is why social services can help out the millions of people from outside the United States come into the United States, but their own people they ignore. They ignore their own people. It's easier to get food stamps if I'm an immigrant than it is for me economically low impacted. I know that from firsthand experience because I have my Social Security, and because my Social Security is at some dumb limit, they say you're not qualified for food stamps. And right now, I am really hurting. I mean, I got a job. You know, it's hard because I'm 74 years old. I want to get my career job back again, and I will. But right now, I have to have this measly little job that every day I have to ask for payment, and then it goes by a week and no payment. I don't have the cash flow. My family right now eats peanut butter and bread. We are very limited in the funds. And I have no idea why the person that hired me can't pay me on a regular basis. I do the work, I show up, and I do the work, and they can't pay me. I'm at meager wages. I'm at the low end of wages. And no, it's not very comfortable. It's not comfortable to tell your wife of 32 years or your 24-year-old son or your 18-year-old son that you're trying to take care of. I'm sorry, family. I don't know what to get you. Or I might have $8.71 for pizza, but eating pizza every night gets old. Or I have to take my son to school, and it involves 2 trips, total of $30 a day. And you're probably saying, why is it so much? Well, my car only gets 8 miles to the gallon. That's how much my car gets. And it is hard because gas is going up. I'm very lucky to find gas at $4.79. Most of the places are over 5.25. It's going up to $7 in California. $7 in California. And that's really hard to pay that kind of funds there. Yeah, I agree with you. Welcome back, Dana. She says another way to control us. The politics in this country are terrible. Politicians cannot run a country. You need business people, people that have business savvy to run the country. People that know how to make deals, how to be stern, how to meet with impossible leaders. Our current president could care less about the social service system. He opened the borders as soon as he elected president. He had open borders. He stopped the gas line from Canada into the United States so that fuel would go up, so that the people in the Middle East would control our economy. It is control. They raised the price just last week when they retaliated against another country. But it all affects social services. It affects CPS. It's a ripple effect. Most of you that call in or in the show are at low income. It's not your choice. And it's hard because you need so much. One of the first rules I want to talk about is get an attorney, and that is an impossible task. I know it is. I know it's hard for you all out there. Now, I do want to thank Mr. Vincent W. Davis, the attorney who has his law firm, Vincent W. Davis and Associates, produce this podcast. And he'd love to talk to you if you need help at 888-888-6582. And I'll talk to you more about Mr. Davis. But I seem to come to the show twice a day. No problem. 7 days a week. Why can I not be, paid when I do a job regularly basis? Why is it so hard to not be paid? To the point where I have to beg for work performed. Beg for work performed. That's a horrible feeling. And maybe I get a little off track. I need to get back to focus on CPS because CPS is what we're here for. And I want you to understand this agency is not your friend. They don't do family reunification. They will violate your civil and constitutional rights. They don't care. All they care about is the money they receive from the government, and the money is unaccountable for. There's no transparency. There's no board of directors. There are no supervisors. And I'm talking about my case, but also the people that talk to me from their city or state. There's no accountability. The government keeps every month sending out $20,000 per child per month. And think about how the business is. It's a $38 billion business a year. $38 billion that the government gives CPS. That money does not go to families to help them. It didn't go to my case to help me. I needed help. In 2010, unfortunately, I lost my career job through no fault of my own. Again, it's because the government, the state of California, was not budgeting their money. That's the problem with these politicians. They don't know how to budget money. And I know that politicians are listening. I'm not trying to downplay them. There are some good politicians, but most of them are bad. We have such a hard time balancing our budget, our money, because we give it out so much and we have no accountability. Every CPS services should show what they spend the money on and how it's spent. It needs to be audited. In Georgia, for instance, a lady there told me, Kay, from Richmond, Richmond, Kentucky, not Georgia, I'd stand corrected, Richmond, Kentucky, that there was an audit of the CPS in Richmond, and they could not find out where $389,000 went. $389,000. That's a lot of money. That's close to $1 million. Where did it go? It went into people's pockets. I know from firsthand experience, my social worker, a young girl, had started out, who did not have a college degree, who did not even take any social work classes. I think all social workers that work in CPS must be clinical psychiatrists and got a degree in clinical psychiatry that's a major, and then a minor in social work, where they take social work classes so that when they come to work, they know how to help out families, not rip them off. All she talked about was her Gucci purse. She got a new one every week, her eye makeup, her eyelashes, her clothing, her BMW car, because the bonus you'd get for taking our children to keep them in. Their goal is for every social worker to keep a child to their 18 so they get money every month. It's true. There was in 2022 in Arizona, a group of social workers that thought it was funny by putting on pink t-shirts professional kidnappers on the front of their shirt. Professional kidnappers. That's the attitude of these social workers. And on the back, where's your children? That's not funny. They were fired, 8 of them. And it's a story. Go look it up. Pink t-shirts on social workers 2022. And that sticks in my mind. It just sticks sickening in my mind because that's the mentality of social workers. Now, I've had one social worker on the show from Maryland, very sweet person, talked candidly with me, but she could not believe what I was saying. And I feel like the people that called from her area that said the social workers were bad, talked to her. She said that we have 6 months of training. Now, up in Maine, they say they do licenses, which I think is important. Social workers need to have a license. They need to go through recertification. They need to be properly trained. They need to also know what reunification is. A social worker doesn't know about reunification or respect to elders or respect to seniors. I'm a parent, no respect from social workers. I'm a senior, no respect. I'm an elder, no respect. I was 6 years old when I lost my job. And for 5 years, I was hounded by lay people that called in and said I was doing something wrong with my children. Those lay people were my in-laws. That's the problem with the way the system is. You don't have to write down the complaint in writing or sign your name to it. Anybody could call in and say anything. And sadly to say, a lot of you out there, I'm not saying who are listening, but a lot of people out there are using CPS to get back at their neighbor. Say their neighbor's dog constantly barks all the time, or the neighbor's bushes overgrown in their yard. They will call CPS, say, hey, by the way, so-and-so is beating their children. It isn't true. But the problem is CPS, they're not very well educated, has to believe that every complaint is true and you're guilty till you're proven innocent. You're guilty till you're proven innocent. And that is wrong. That's wrong. You should be, innocent till you're proven guilty. That's the way the law works in every other thing. Criminal law, you have a better chance of being okay in criminal law than you are in CPS. And the sad thought about it is the police sometimes mirror the CPS. So you get criminal charges as well as CPS charges against you. And CPS says, well, we'll wait off till your criminal charges are taken care of. That's right. That happened to me. And why did it happen to me? If you look at my case, I'm a respectable father, of 6 children, a loving husband, and I was doing good with my family. Had a 4-bedroom home close to the beach, a walk-in swimming pool, a grotto jacuzzi, an English garden on one side, a tropical garden on one side, a dog run for Siberian Huskies, high voltage ceilings. The house was fairly new. It had all the state-of-the-art things and everything. But I had a high mortgage and I had a job that paid it. But unfortunately, when you lose your job, your means, and I had money put away. I survived for a couple years without a job to pay off the mortgage. It was hard. I had survived because of money I put away. But it won't last forever. And the reason why I was not getting work was because they thought I was too old at 60 to work. Now, I didn't look it. I felt 30 years younger. I thought I was like 30. And then 5 years later, after the hounding by CPS, come into my home, want to see things, want to talk about things, saying this and this, and I proved them wrong every step of the way. They say you're not paying your utilities. I showed them all my utility bills. They say your kids are not in school. I showed them all their grade reports. I showed back to school nights and teacher conferences and how we were actively involved in their performances in school. We went to a lot of their functions. We were very much involved in Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Now the Boy Scouts is called Scouters. So Scouters and Girl Scouts and AYSO soccer. We had them involved in sports. We had them involved in education and stuff. And on top of that, we were a family, meaning that we would take off as a family. My wife and I never had date nights. We should have. We didn't. Our dedication was to our kids. We would help them with homework. We'd help them with so many support and love. There was love in the home. Unfortunately, when I lost my job, I had to cut back a lot of the things we had. And one thing was Disneyland passes. They're expensive. I couldn't afford them. And I guess my children were spoiled and they were disappointed because suddenly we were in a Spartan lifestyle. No more soda pop, no more sweets, no more chips, no more eating out, no more fast foods. A lot of things they enjoy, the cookies, the ice cream and stuff. We had to go down to the basics. I had to take my food down from $600 a month for a family of 6 down to, 300, and that was a struggle. Right now, I'm trying to feed my family on 130. It's 4 in the family, and I'm feeding them for $130 a week. That's not enough. That's not enough. Oh no, Social Service says I make too much money. They were fine until they did the last recertification. Anyway, it is tough. I know where you guys are coming from. My children were taken from me illegally. They're not in extreme danger. Their bedrooms were clean. They could sleep there, and it was safe. They each had their own bathroom. You're probably, well, what charge they charge you? Well, unfortunately, at the same time, I had a perfect storm brewing. My parents were dying, and I was trying to take care of their belongings, their personal belongings, and ship them off to family and friends and relatives and so forth. So I loaded them all in my home, and that made too much downstairs. Boxes on top of boxes, furniture on top of furniture. But they weren't anywhere extreme danger of my children. But they thought it was. And on top of that, my children were in school, and they took them out of school. And their idea of foster care was put them in a concrete block shelter that was nearby the courts, the dependency court in Orange County, next door to the juvenile prison where juveniles were serving time for doing things that are bad. And that was the play yard my children were thrust into. On top of that, the play yard had beehives and bees were stinging the kids. The place was dirty, overcrowded, the food was terrible, and their idea of education was not take the kids to the school of origin, but to sit down and read them a book. Now, I had a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old. And reading books may be good for bedtime stories or whatever it may be, but my kids were on STEM program. They were taking a science class, a technology class, an engineering class, and a math class. They all wanted to be engineers. And so that was the program they're in. And I was paid for it, by the way. I was paid for their private education for one school. Middle school was public and the elementary school was public. And they were good schools, good rapport with the teachers and classmates. My kids were not in any trouble in school. We as parents were loving, caring parents. We did argue, though. We did argue. And that was one fallacy in our relationship was the arguments. You should never argue in front of your kids. You should never argue in front of your kids. I want to welcome John Elfer. Glad that you're here. I forgot what city and state you're from, John, and what question do you have? What question do you have? I'm missing my co-host this morning. She was on last night, but for whatever reason, she's not here. Also had another co-host, and she's not here. Maybe they'll be here on tonight. But, okay, you're from Palmdale, California. Well, you're not too far. And out in Palmdale, you have a case probably, and you're dealing with them. Is there something I can ask you, John? Is something that maybe you like to ask me? What I can do to help you. I don't know what EIFER stands for. Oh, it's your name. I'm sorry. John Ovid. Oh, your case is closed. Okay, well, do you have your children back? Is that the good news? Do you have your children back, I hope? Oh, no. I'm sorry to hear that, John. What happened? Did the kids, do you lose custody to your kids? That is a very tragic thing to hear about. Would you like to talk about your case or anything you'd like to say to the people that are listening? Yeah, I like to. John, would you like to call in at 626-698-0990, and you could talk about it if you like, or you can text and, you can start from the beginning and we can all listen and see how it maybe would help you. Yeah, it does. It helps other parents not do the same mistake. Um, there's several rules that I have. One rule is about getting an attorney, another rule is about keeping notes, and the third rule is not to talk to social workers. And I'd like to go into more detail with those three rules. I do that with every show. The key to your case is going to have an attorney. You're probably saying, I can't afford an attorney. Okay, sure, John. Take your time. Take your time, John. Anyway, I'll talk about my three rules. Okay. If you're going to fight CPS, you can't do it yourself. I tried to for a year and a half. I did write emails, I had meetings, I showed them where they violated my constitutional rights, my civil rights. I cited amendments, I cited rules and laws. They were ignored. They made my life worse to the point where it was terrible. It was a terrible, terrible thing. Okay, John is sharing his story. He starts off, okay, well, let me start by saying we had to pay the attorney. I was a non offending parent and only talked to the social worker when necessary to schedule a visitation. Oh, hey, Faye. That's okay. That's okay. That's what life is about, is changes. Welcome, Faye. If you want to come on and talk, you can. Um, you know, I think you can also, you have the link to get on the show, so you can be on the show with me if you like, Faye. Faye is from Richmond, Kentucky. She is a mother of a child, and she's had a CPS case for a long time. And she has been following my show. We have John talking about his case. Who said that? What were the allegations, John? What were the allegations? Okay, mom had a paid attorney. The gist of it, you and your wife weren't seeing eye to eye, and she was trying to take the children from you. You're probably going through a divorce. And that's sad because the children need both parents. Both parents. Now, I'm talking about to you right now about getting an attorney. That would be your key. You know, fighting CPS is like going through open heart surgery. If you're going to go through open heart surgery and have your heart valve replaced, you're going to see a professional doctor who has gone through medical school, done an internship, had mentored another doctor before you have them work on you. Same thing holds true with CPS. You need someone who can navigate and go through the quagmire of CPS. CPS is just like your Alice in Wonderland, fall in the rabbit hole and have all these doors that go to nowhere. It's very complex. They're very rude. They don't care for you as a person. They won't help you. CPS is very biased about things. So getting an attorney is important. Sure, Faye, deal with important things first. I understand that. John's allegations were that the mom had gone to the hospital because her water broke early with her second child, and she tested positive on antique for aminophene. Okay, that's a common thing that there's a lot of complaints about. First of all, when she goes to the hospital to have her child, CPS, unless they have a court order, can't take the child or interfere or go in the room. Every hospital lately has a CPS worker now as a case worker, and they're immediately taking children right after birth, and that's wrong. It's against the law. And they'll try to call policemen to intimidate you. Policemen are not Gestapo. They have laws to follow too. And CPS workers and police, you can ask them to leave the delivery room or leave the birthing room or the recovery room or whatever room you're in. That's sad when they do that. That is wrong. That is so, so wrong, John. And understand that. So you need to get an attorney to fight this. Someone who knows the laws, who is a family law attorney. You probably wonder, well, I can't afford one. I know that. I couldn't afford one either, but I sold my home and got money. Somehow you'll get money from a family, from a friend, from taking a credit line on your home, borrow money or whatever it is. But you need an attorney. You need a good attorney. And you say, well, how can I find an attorney? Well, you type in and you want to search for it on the internet. You type in the city you're in and the next closest, biggest city. So you have two cities working for you. And you type in, find me a family law attorney in such and such a city. Or you can start off with the city, the two cities. Then you're going to get a list of names. And from that list, you narrow it down to 10 people after going through it that are qualified as a family law attorney. Okay, but shouldn't the child be put in you, John? You say there was no allegations, but shouldn't the child be put on you there? Faye says it's hard to find an attorney in Kentucky that's not in with CPS, since that isn't fearful of CPS. Well, there's got to be somebody, Faye. I know you're in Richmond. I don't know what the next biggest city to Richmond is, but there's got to be an attorney. That's why you make a list of 10 names. You look at them carefully, and then you weed it down to 5 you're going to call. And of those 5, I have an attorney right now. They'll come to Richmond, Georgia, and fight your CPS case. And his name is Mr. Vincent Davis. He's a trial attorney. He has many years' experience fighting CPS. He'll fight out of state. He was in Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. He's in Northern California, Southern California. He'll go there. Yes, he does have a retainer. He's not for free. But maybe that can be worked out. So I know that attorneys are afraid of CPS, but there are some attorneys that are not afraid. You have to know the law. Those people that are afraid are because they may not know the law. That may be the problem. And Faye says in order to win in Kentucky, you have to have an attorney from another state. Well, Mr. Davis should be one of the 5 people you call. And you can reach him at 888-888-6582. And make sure when you call in, you tell them that Bob Pace sent you. And then when you speak to Mr. Davis, you say that Bob Pace sent you. Now, I have a ticket running at the bottom of my screen. It says consultation with attorney Vince Davis, care of Bob Pace calendar.com, law office of VCVWD, Bob Pace. That link will take you to his site to schedule an appointment. And he's offering right now for 60 minutes, for 30 minutes, $60. It's $2 a minute. But he'll talk to you about, the strategies of fighting CPS and getting your children back. It's well worth the 30-minute call. You'll learn so much in there for $60. So he's available right now. Anybody in any state can call him. Stuff like that. Now, John says again the mom had a paid attorney, which I paid for, by the name of Rachel Raymond, a very well known and respected dependency law attorney. Okay, all right. We try not to use names of judges, lawyers, or social workers, things like that. Try to keep the names out of there if you can, please. One thing I can tell to you, Faye, when you're talking to attorneys, and everyone listen, when you talk to an attorney, if they're not willing to first talk about what they can do for you or how they can do for you, and they want to talk about money, drop them. Anytime an attorney, his first words out of his mouth is that I retainer fee of $25,000, then we can talk. You don't want them. You don't need them. You need someone who'll sit and listen to them for at least a good 30 minutes that can talk about your case. And as I say, $60, $2 a minute is not bad to pay for attorney advice. But anybody that sits there and talks about, $25,000 retainer, $50,000 retainer, you don't want to deal with them. You want to deal with people that talk about your case first. So that's one way to weed them out. And I know it is really hard to win on that. Now, John said they're going to give him the children and mom was going to leave the home. That's a temporary thing. Mom would be back in reunification. She'd have to take parenting classes and programs, again, of the drug. But the drug thing is not necessarily bad. They blow it out too much of a portion. People do take drugs for medicine and things like that. So, and it's something that is correctable. You can correct that. Now, John says, on that day they came to serve mom with the warrant for her to leave the home. I didn't come outside this time frame. They thought was best because they came unannounced. Well, my rule number 3 is you don't allow attorneys in unless, social workers in unless they have a warrant. Same thing with police. But don't answer the door. Now, if they leave your card the first time, call them back and tell them that you're on the advice of your attorney. You need to talk to your attorney what to do. You don't ignore law enforcement or police, but you don't have to answer the door the first time. Just be quiet and stay in your home. Just be quiet and stay in your home. Now, what was their grounds for having, John, why did they want to take the child from you temporary? Why was they wanted to take your custody away? Because you didn't test for drugs. And yes, Vincent's still doing a podcast. He still does a podcast. He works it in his busy schedule. He still does a podcast. He does a podcast called The Secret How to Fight CPS and Win. That's his podcast. Are you saying keep the names to Vincent Davis only? I don't understand what I'm saying there. You asked me a question. Is he doing the podcast? I said he is. Um, no, I'm not saying keep what names. I don't know what you mean by that. I'm lost there. Now, you did not come out. You didn't answer the door. That's fine. They should have left and left a business card. But out in Palmdale, I don't know how the police are. I don't know how the police are in Palmdale. John, if you could clarify your comment, that I don't quite understand this comment here. You say, are you saying keep the names to Vincent Davis only? I don't know what you mean by that. I maybe misunderstood that or something. Okay, so Faye, I appreciate your input about how hard it is in Richmond, Kentucky to get attorneys to represent the case because they're afraid of CPS and they also want to charge a lot. I just say to anybody that wants to charge a lot, put them on last of your list. That should not be the forefront of money in the discussion. They can charge for consultation, and I think $2 a minute is reasonable. $60 for 30-minute advice from Vincent is very reasonable because the kind of attorney he is. My brother opened the gate to our drive for them, even with us requesting him that he doesn't unlock the gate for anybody. Wow. You got really a bad luck of things there, John. And that warrant, did you read the warrant? Was it really executed correct? Signed by a judge, wet signature, and it said all the information it's supposed to send? You should be able to read the warrant. But I don't understand what are the allegations against you that take the children from your custody. I know you said that your wife had tested positive when her water broke and she's in the hospital. And that's a common thing. That's called medical trafficking. They're doing a lot of medical trafficking, and that is wrong. Oh my God. How do they know you're home? I guess, but the way the law reads is that you do not have to open your door to anybody. And if that's their first visit, they can leave a business card. You call them back. But there's no thing called appropriate time and protected children. They're stretching it. They're stretching it. And if you had an attorney, your wife's attorney should recognize that. That was wrong what they did. They violated your civil rights. It's it there. There's no rule that says an amount of certain time. You see, that's the whole problem. We have to be educated. You have to Google the Welfare Institution Code 300, 325. It's in there in California. Now, I know you're in California, John, but you need to understand the laws and what they can do, what they can't do. That's the whole key to success of fighting CPS is become educated. Okay, John. I first want to thank about you being a guest on the show. I thank about your interests. I'm not, I wish I had a wand that could make everybody right again. I only talk from my experience. and from the experience of others that shared it on the show, and from reading and looking at the number one rule is say you never open the door to police or to CPS unless they have a warrant. And one way to look at a warrant is they can hold it up to a window and you can read the warrants through the window. But they're doing the extreme because they're in a retaliation mode. They're not there to help out the family. They're not doing family reunification. Oh, there's no police. There's social workers. Well, that's even better yet because social workers are not armed and they can't do what they're doing. They can't do what they're doing. They think they can. Well, I think that's best to meet them at their home turf. There's no need for them to meet you at your home. It's your private home. When you do business in this world, do your clients come to your home to do business unless you're set up that way? No, you work in an office. So anytime social workers want to talk to you, say, I'll be happy to meet with you at your office to discuss it without my children because my children are being protected. And sometimes I tell people to take their children to another state to put them with a family, friend, or a relative to protect your children. I know it's Monday night quarterbacking, and this is what if you could do there. But if the social workers came out the first time, you don't have to open the door. They'll leave their card. You call the card and say you're talking to your attorney. You may not have an attorney, but you're going to get some time, and you get back to them. If they come out a second time and you talk to them, then don't open the door. And if they have a warrant, you need to see the warrant. You can go outside, talk to them in your yard, on your private property. You can ask them to leave on your private property. I did this. I talked to them at my car in the public right away. That's how I dealt with my social workers. I refused to let them in my home anymore. I had them in my home a couple times. There was nothing for them to find. But the last time they got a detective to follow me, and then he commanded me to come to my home. And then they found my parents' belongings in the home and charged me with neglect. I'm so sorry, John, that you've lost your case. And I guess you've lost your children. That's a sad story. That's a real sad story. Faye, what are you telling me now? Well, most people never think they'll ever be involved with CPS until they are. True. That's why I think all parents should take a course in learning their child's welfare laws, their rights, and the court process involving in child abuse and neglected cases. Well, since we're not born with a manual, I think maybe it's best if parents are going to have children. I think they should take classes. I think before parents get married, maybe the state requires couples to take classes in parenting, classes in relationships first. It may solve a lot of divorces. It may help out with a lot of CPS cases. Education is important. And I think in order to get your marriage license, you got to take classes. And they should be classes in areas that will help you. If you get a driver's license, don't you have to, study a handbook and learn and take a driver's test? Same thing should be with a marriage. You should learn, what a marriage is all about. You should learn things. There should be requirements to get your marriage license. Too easy for people to say, I'm in love. Let's go to Vegas and get married. Then they have a children. They forget about the consequences of having children. Then there's divorce. There's too many divorces happening, and there's not enough of education. And I agree with you. They should take a class, Faye. They should take a class. That was 10 minutes that they waited. Well, I don't know. I have refused to answer my door. And if there's a card there, I call them back. I've had that happen to me since then. They're still trying. And so basically, if they know you got an attorney, they're going to ease off. They don't like to fight attorneys, especially in California. They don't like to fight attorneys, and especially Mr. Davis. They don't like fighting him. Good. I think that's important, John. You probably found some insight to your case. Wow, I should have you as a guest on my show. Yeah, I feel now 15 years later, that I have enough knowledge that I do my case totally different. I didn't take social services seriously. That was another thing. Yes, I agree. I would still have my daughter. I had 3 kids out of my, um, 6 kids taken from me. And one of them was convinced to divorce their parents, or divorce us, their brothers, their grandparents, their relatives, everything, change their name, seal their birth certificate, and be adopted by a foster care family. Now at 21, she's having second thoughts, and she may be coming around. I don't know. But her brothers still see her at our encouragement. But I lost a daughter to them. That was the revenge, by the way. The social worker looked bad in court. She's being cross-examined and she lied. And they caught her with a big lie. And she could have been sued. I didn't have the money to do a civil lawsuit against the CPS. It would have taken me. I spent all my money with my attorney. I lost my home. So I was financially strapped. I still am today. Yeah, I know that magic wand that can make everything better. I agree with you, John. I agree with you. Faye from Richmond, Kentucky says most cases involving CPS children abuse neglect cases happen not necessarily due to what the parents did, not because someone called in and complained to the neighbor, a school teacher, or some other professional. That's what happened to me. It was the neighbor, and that one complained cost my life. I agree. Those neighbors are called lay people. They're not professionals. They're lay people, and lay people abuse the system. It's got to be changed. It's got to be changed so that you have to put it in writing. You have to sign your name to it. That way, if you found out that you did lie, you could be sued. And I guarantee you be a lot of false accusations coming in. Okay, Faye said she'll be right back. John says, we made it to our visits even when they scheduled them over an hour away. They still terminated our parental rights. I know. The more I complained, the more I fought them, the less I saw my kids. They started becoming monitor visits. At first, they weren't monitored. Then they were monitored. And then they were at a special housing where you had these young little workers, 18, 19, 20-year-old workers watching over you with other parents there with their kids. And they were very listening in to what you were saying. They, it was bad. I try to tell you, you as a parent went through hell in CPS. I know no other agency that is corrupt and it is as bad as them. That's why I think you need to have an attorney. I appreciate John sharing all this, but I've come to a closure of this show. I've gone way over, 4 minutes over, so I have to close the show. I want to thank you, John. I want to thank you, Kay, for your comments and everything. please, everybody, don't give up on your children. Be nice to them. Follow what they tell you to do. You will get your children back eventually. And I hope that you get your children. God bless you all. And thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you tonight at